So how does the YouTube links work? Later I'll be sending out a link to the videos, but how do the YouTube links work as of right now?
I watched a couple things and they worked wonderfully.
Okay. I had a few people complain about the XBMP interface, and apparently the YouTube plugin is a little buggy and it works intermittently on certain systems. So if you have problems with the XBMC interface, that's an XBMC problem, not my problem. It's really there just for, hey, because we can. All right, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm basically scrolling through this document and I'm literally going through it literally line by line here. So the objectives today basically move inside and outside your defined path. So first let's figure out what a path is. First thing we can do is print a working directory. And you can see that I'm in /home/Leo. And if I do an ls here, you can see the folders that I have inside of this directory. So if I make a directory, and I will call this Leo, and then do an ls again, I typically do an ls lowercase l, capital F, just because it displays in what I would call details view. It's a little easier to read this way because you get the permissions, the users, the dates, the timestamps, then the directories and the files. Directories are in blue. This is just a default, literally a default Debian install that I just installed, an hour ago. So this is about as fresh as they come. So you can see the new directory that I created here, Leo. So I could basically what working inside and outside of the defined path is everything runs basically out of the current folder that you're running in. Now you can tell things to run somewhere else if you want. You just have to define that path to it. So if I want to cat a file, I could do it Leo. Actually, that's not going to work. Let's change directories to Leo, and then cat Leo. Actually, I got to get my head into this again. So what I just asked the computer to do was display Leo, and it says no such file directory. And if I look inside LF, there's nothing in it, which is an accurate statement. So we want to make a file or a folder. Either way, we could start here and just choose something. So we could do like sudo. Let's see if we can do sudo ifconfig and then append that to Leo. And it asks me for my password. And so I type in password. And it says, and we're going to actually get to this later on today. It says Leo is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. Luckily, it will be reported to me. So what I'm going to do is switch user to root, put in the password. And as you can see, instead of being logged in as Leo, I am now logged in as root. So now if I hit the up arrow, actually, let's do ifconfig and then append that to Leo. And if I do a lslf, now you can see I have a file, Leo, and the size of it, so I can prove that there's some stuff in it.
Leo.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Michael. Question. So what is when you do a sudo, you are escalating your privileges, correct?
Yeah, and as I remind myself, I kind of take for granted this stuff's in my head, and I don't speak English sometimes. So thanks for reminding me. So there's switch user, like I can switch user to Leo, and I can switch user to root. And basically that's the equivalent of like, well, it's not like log in and log out. It's literally like change accounts. It's kind of the equivalent of run as in Windows. You familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's about the equivalent of that. The real difference is the switch user command permanently switches you versus if I wanted to stay logged in as Leo and just run something once, I could sudo that command, and it basically just executes it once and keeps me logged in as Leo.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, so there you go. And being that this is a fresh install, it's good to kind of hit some of these roadblocks right away and then see exactly how we fix them. So now that I'm logged in as root, and if I print my working directory, pwd, you can see that I'm in /home/Leo/Leo. So I could change directory to /home and then print my working directory, and you can see I'm back over at just regular home. So when I execute commands, if I want something to run out of a specific location, I have to define the full path to it. So I'm trying to think of a command I can do off the top of my head here. So like if I make a directory here, we'll call this test123. You can see that I have that created in my local directory. But if I make the directory /Leo/Leo/test123, this is going to tell me the wrong path. Oops, it's the home directory. All right, so you can see that it took that particular command. Now, if I print my working directory again, I'm still here. But now if I change directories to home Leo, you can see it created a relative file where I told it to create it. So by basically saying, I'm in the home directory here, I'm basically saying make a directory somewhere else, which is a very nice, convenient way of doing things because there's no real easy Windows equivalent here that you can do, at least in the GUI portion of it. You kind of have to go to that file or folder and then create the file and then, work relatively. So this is basically working inside of your directory versus outside of your directory. Any questions so far? All right, so all we've done is print the working directory here and then use the commands make directory to create new working directories. But in this case, what I've done is I've actually created it outside of your the directory that you're working in. And do me a favor, mute your mics. You're more than welcome to participate, but just for the sake of getting feedback, thank you. Looks like it might have gone away. All right, so MV, moves or renames directories. So let's check out that command. So there's a couple of different ways we could do this. We could do MV tac help and see if we can get some, that's actually the MV command, get some help MV. Help here. But if you notice that it just scrolled all the way through the screen, and that's not really any fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a pipe more to this. So it's MV space tac help space pipe sign or upper bar or whatever you want to call it, bar, and then more, and that'll give you one page at a time. And then if you hit the space bar, it'll get to the end. If you hit enter, it'll continue to give you one line at a time. Or spacebar will give you one page at a time. So that's a little bit about the...
Leo.
Yes.
In the syntax, when you do a pipe more, if you do a pipe space more, would that give you an error?
Nope.
Okay, thanks.
No. Some things Unix is a little sensitive to. And it definitely wants things in a particular format. Like if you were to create a directory with a space in it, which I'll cover here in a second, the syntax is very specific, but in this case, basically what I'm telling it to do here is I'm basically saying do this command, then do the more command on the output of that. So I'm actually manipulating the standard input, standard output, and standard error. In this case, just standard input and standard output of the way the command line terminal operates. Because I could have just as easily done a more for MV. No, I couldn't have. If I do it for the help file, it would do it that way. So I could do. This probably wasn't exactly a good example of that, but let me illustrate the more command here. So I'm going to change directories to Leo and then more Leo. Okay. So in this case, because it was actually a file in my relative locating directory, I can see the contents of that file. So that displays it in the actual terminal this way, which is slightly different than if you were to do something. Let's do cat Leo pipe more. And in this case, if I do a cat Leo pipe more versus a more Leo, notice if I hit enter here, it's the exact same output. So I'm basically telling it the exact same thing, or effectively it's no different for me, the end user. So in some cases, you can use multiple commands to get a specific interface or a specific output. In other syntaxes, if you don't have it exactly right, it's going to error out and tell you, here's what we don't like about this. Sometimes those are command specific, and other times they're not. Like, for example, Nmap. If you tell it to do an Nmap scan and you say do a scan and I want to do a TCP scan of something, but only the ports that I define or something like UDP ports, then Nmap will actually error out and say, hey, you can't do that. So it'll actually tell you the syntax. So most people fear the error part of standard in, standard out, standard error, but it actually is the terminal is actually telling you exactly what it wants. It's our job to basically interpret that error and basically turn it into a syntax that'll work or readjust our approach completely. There you go. All right, so so what I wanted to do is MV or MV tac help or man MV. Now notice this is different. This is the actual manual for the actual help file. So if you want the long version of this, which I'm gonna do a Control Q here and get back and then clear my screen. Just so you guys can see it. If I do a man space MV, this actually brings up the manual. And in a second, I'll show you how to find those. So these can be very, very long. And again, you have the same thing. Enter here, get you line by line, or space bar will get you a page all the way through, and then :Q to get back to your terminal. So this kind of what it appears to be doing with the terminal is opening up a new interface like the manual file, and then you can navigate that, and then you can exit out of that, and it doesn't dump a bunch of stuff to your terminal. So that's very, very helpful when you're trying to keep your screen clean. So notice the difference here. And actually what I'll do is let's create two files here and compare our outputs. So I'm going to do a man for MV, and I want to pen the output of this to, I'll call it manual command, and then I'll do a MV tac help, and then I'll append that to manual help. Okay, and then if I look at my directory here, you can see. Well, first thing, let's do the obvious. Notice which one's bigger. Okay, if you look at the actual manual, the manual is much, much bigger than the TAC help. In some cases, you can actually just do a TAC H or a /H. It would be the equivalent in Windows. But just get used to doing TAC help, especially for now. It'll help give you good discipline as to what you're doing. So in here, you can, and technically I have a duplicate of the manual in this file right here, but I also just have a quick version of all of the details of my help in that one. So if I want to look at that, I can use something like the VI editor, which I'll talk about here in a second. It's just one of the editors we're going to talk about today. So I can do, and using some of the keyboard shortcuts that we talked about last week, I can just type M and then Tab, and then it'll get me to manual C versus manual H. And then if I do a manual H and then Tab again, then it'll actually bring me up in an editor, a virtual editor. So the the VI and the Vim command are probably the two most popular terminal editing commands that we possibly can use. So let's actually move on to figure out what the MV command does. Now we understand the basics, right? So we know that there's a command MV for moving or renaming directories. We want to get help on that, so there's two ways to do that. We can do a TAC help or a manual for the actual command. This one is the actual TAC help. So it says it right here, and what I want to do is I want to teach you guys how to fish here instead of just giving you the fish, because you're just going to come to a point where you're going to go, well, I don't remember that. My dog ate it, I lost it, I don't remember, it's been 6 months, what do I do? And you're going to have to get yourself familiar with the syntax again. Here we go. So in this case, I've got the MV command. I have different options, which we'll talk about right down in here, and then the source, and then the directory. So rename source to destination or move source to the destination directory, either way. So a couple things in here. F. If you are going to this is an important one, because if you've ever been in Windows and you tried to take one folder that's named exactly the same thing as another folder and copy it over it, notice you get a prompt and it says, hey, are you sure you want to overwrite that? Or do you want to keep version A, version B, or you want to keep both versions? You guys familiar with that in Windows? Well, over here, if you don't want that prompt, you can just do a TAC F, and that'll just in some cases maliciously, do exactly what you just told it to do, which is overwrite the destination directory. So I typically do use the TAC F. But let's say that it's a very, very large directory structure and only some of the things that you want to actually overwrite. Well, you can either type in a TAC I or a TAC interactive. Both of these do the exact same thing. If I type a TAC F or a TAC force, if I substitute TAC F or TAC F in the options portion of the command, these basically do the same thing. But what the I does is it basically prompts before overwriting. So every time that there's a conflict, it'll say, hey, do you want to do this? Hey, do you want to do this? Hey, do you want to do this? Which can be annoying if there's a large directory structure or a large amount of files, because basically you could sit there for an hour and just click yes, 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 or no, no, no. Then there's the T for target directory. Move all of the source arguments into the target directory. So T for target. Or there's a capital T for no target directory. So that treats the destination as a normal file. There's U for update. Move only when the source file is newer than that of the destination. So that's nice because let's say like, for example, you're backing up, let's say, a USB drive or something like that, and you just want to take a copy of the USB drive and you want to put it to some other USB drive, you could use the TAC U, because anytime that the current drive that you're working on has changes, it'll give you a chance to just overlay those. In other words, if they're the same, ignore them. And then V is verbose, which explains what is being done, and meaning if you want feedback to your terminal, you can use a tag V. And tag version is really of no help whatsoever. So, because I'll show you that real quick. So MV tag V. It's tech version. Tech version. This will tell you, hey, MV, it's a GNU Core Utilities command, 8.13, copyright. And so while most cases attack V is verbose, there actually is a version, but that just tells you the version of the command that you're actually using, which for most intensive purposes is absolutely useless for us here and now. All right. And so we're going to start moving some directories around here in a second. So same thing with ls, right? ls, tac help, right? You can see what and it may be helpful to do these with a pipe more, so that way you get one page at a time. So if you want the list files command, you can do that one page at a time. All right.
Hey, Leo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask you, is it possible, can you make the screen big?
I don't know if that'll, like that, or you want me
to change the, maybe change the font?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Yeah. How's that? All right, so is that better? There you go. All right, so.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so this is the ls command with the tac help, and you can go ahead and read the different command line options. We're going to get into this later. I'm really just illustrating, how to find out some basics about this. So I'm just going to space all the way through that, clear my screen, and then do a manual for the ls, and you get to see, the difference between those. Not really concerned with all of the command line outputs here and now. Will be plenty of time to go through that stuff, especially when we start prepping for the exam, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, I'm simply just, learning how to navigate the interface, for lack of better words. All right. So you can see that the manuals are much, much, much bigger. So I have couple of things here. Another thing that's important in this utility, and just for the record here, I'm basically here, and there's VI and other editing programs. There are several, and I listed a good top, 10 of the popular editing programs somewhere in here. Oh, here they are, basic file management, so Vim, Elvis, BVI, SlickEdit, gedit. These are really good alternatives to VI. So at some point we'll play with those a little bit. But what I want to do is, before we get into that stuff, I want to actually cover, to see what's installed. So there is a text editor. You can try to see if VI is installed. More than likely it will be nowadays. But things like Elvis are generally not installed, but you could install them if you want. So there's VI, and VI is its own workshop. I mean, it could take you a month just to figure out VI. This is one of those commands where, without a doubt, go find the VI cheat sheet and work yourself through it. Because I can cover the basics here, but it absolutely is complex enough to where it'll take you a year to learn. I remember when I was doing intrusion detection stuff, we were looking at log files and things like that. Man, I fought VI for the first 2 months I was using it. I couldn't remember the commands, the shortcuts, and it's literally one of those things where if you don't have that cheat sheet, it'll take you a year to learn. But if you have that cheat sheet, you can get that down to weeks to months. So here's VI manual command. I'm going to tab through that to auto-complete it, and you can see that basically opens the file. And basically, I get to scroll up and down in the file, okay? But there's really, if I hit the space bar or typing here, it really doesn't do anything. It's not editing this file. If I want to edit this file, I have to actually hit Control-I. Lost myself in my command. Let me go back in. So it's Control-I, Alt-I, Shift-I. I'm pretty sure it's just this is one of those things where you get used to doing it so many times. You're like, what the heck is the keyboard shortcut? Keyboard shortcut for that. So let's start over again. VI manual command, hit enter. If I hit I, that actually puts it in insert mode, and then I can navigate. I can write a bunch of stuff here. Leo is here. Linux plus class, and then if I do a colon Q and then an exclamation, this is a quit and force it to quit. If I don't add the exclamation and I hit enter, it'll say no write since last change. Add the exclamation to override that. So I hit the escape. He got to hit colon again. Colon Q exclamation. All right. Now, if I VI the manual command again, notice it did not save my changes here in the beginning of the file. So I'm going to do an I again, and then put some stuff in here. Some stuff goes in there. And then colon, escape colon Q, or WQ exclamation. And basically this is write it and then quit it. So it's save, then quit. If I just want to back out, you just quit. If you want to save it, then you have to write it, then quit it, and then get used to adding that exclamation at the end, because that'll force it. And so now if I do a head for the manual command, okay, this will just give me the first, I think by default it's like the first 10 lines of that file, and since that's where my changes are, that's all I really care about. I don't actually need it. So you can see some stuff goes in there. So it actually saved it. And if I do an ls tac lf, you should be able to see the timestamp changed as well. So it's actually 7 o'clock on my computer, so, or 7:09, so that's an accurate timestamp. Any questions so far? Next, I want to show you an alternative to this. It's VIM. Forget what VIM stands for. Just actually, I'll tell you. I just forget off the top of my head. Oh, VI improved. So in the word improved, apparently the M is capitalized, so this is the new enhanced VI command. You got to appreciate, the Linux naming convention and the way that Linux goes about um, the open source world in general, the way they come up with the names for things, just some of them are just absolutely like, really, that's the name of that command. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're not so obvious. So anyway, so we're going to do a VIM, and it says VIM command not found. So this is good because we can go install it. So the way to do that would be apt get install VIM. And this is one easy way to do things, especially in GNOME desktops. So note to self, look how easy it is to install things in Unix. Aptitude get install the VIM command, and let me just take you through this one time because you'll get the idea here after you do this once or twice. Read the package list, done. So it went out to the internet, found it, found the VIM command. Building a dependency tree to see if there's anything else that I needed. And then the following extra packages will be installed. VIM runtime, suggested packages, it tells me those too. Most of the time you can just ignore these altogether, at least in the basic Linux Plus course you can. And it'll tell you 0 upgraded, 2 newly installed, 0 to remove, and 21 not upgraded. And it's going to need to get 5385 kilobytes of archives. After this operation, 24 megs will be added to your disk. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes. And then it'll go out and actually install those. And as a matter of fact, now that I'm actually here in this section, instead of coming back to these commands, I'm actually just going to install them all right now real quick. All right, and then you can check these out. And it's worth reading this one time, right? So it told us, you sure you want to do this? And it actually tells us some really helpful information in here. So go out to ftp.debian.org, look in the Wheezy distro and get the VIM runtime, VIM i386. It's got the sizes there. I went and retrieved those. And then it unpackaged those from my system. It tells you where it added them to the hard drive, unpacks them, processes them, and then you can run them. So if I hit the up arrow and replace VIM with Elvis, okay, it'll basically tell me the same thing. And I'm just going to hit yes here and go through. Notice Elvis was in all caps. Okay, I'm just literally going to install several editors here. Hit the up arrow again, replace Elvis with BVI, go find it, install it. This also assumes that you have a connection to the internet here. And we would double check here. So I said go get BVI, and it says 1 newly installed here, so that's how we know. We can hit the up arrow again. We can do slick edit. Unable to locate. Look at it. All right, well, let's try gedit next. In this case, gedit, it's actually, that was kind of dumb. Being that I'm on the GNOME system, gedit is already installed, so I could do an ls-tac-lf and then do a gedit manual command, and that should not have failed. I failed to connect this session manager. None of the authentication protocols specified as where you cannot connect to the session business. That should not have failed because it should actually be installed and ready to go. Failed to connect to Session Manager. Okay. Not exactly sure why I'd error it out there, despite the feedback that he is something with the authentication protocols. Whatever. I'm not going to fight this now. You guys probably shouldn't have this, but you notice I do have gedit here, and I found that under the accessories menu. And don't forget to mute your microphones. Gedit text editors right here. So this is kind of like a little bit more robust version of Notepad, if you will. There's also KEdit for the KDE environment. Okay. And if we wanted to go get SlickEdit while we're in installing mode, so I'm going to go over to Iceweasel here. And then just search the internet. It's another way to install things. So, SlickEdit. You can see SlickEdit here. You basically go to the website. All right. Download trial. Oh, that's why I think I paid for it. I forgot. SlickEdit, and there's SlickEdit Core. So you can try these, I believe, for free, but I think you actually have to pay for them at some point. And this one is, trying to give you guys a price here. $299. Forgot about that. Let me make a notes. Paid version. SlickEdit 2013 is equal to $299. All right, little tiny edit there. So clearly, I'm not going to be whipping out the credit card now for this. It does. I have seen it used. I think I've used it maybe once or twice in my life. There was a Super Notepad, a program in Windows called Super Notepad or Super Notepad Lite. Has anybody ever heard or seen of that? Super Notepad. It's like Notepad.
Is it like Notepad++?
I don't know that version. Thing Super Notepad Lite. Anyway, it basically instead of editing text, like all your HTML is in a different color. So I want to say yes, actually. Now that I actually see the link, yes. If this is what I think it is, then yes. I'll give you guys a quick screenshot because this is about the equivalent of SlickEdit. So it's like Notepad, but with lines and color coding and everything else. So yeah, Notepad++. It probably is the same thing. It's just when I used to use it quite often, it was actually called Super Notepad, but it's probably the same command now. At least it looks like it. All right, so there you go. All right. So let's go back to our command line and let's play with a couple of these other editors here. So this is going to give you a a different appreciation for how to edit files via the command line. It's very easy to do this in the GUI. Most people are just deathly afraid of doing this in the actual text editor or the terminal. So this is why I'm spending a little bit more time here. So if we wanted to do Elvis, we just type in Elvis manual command, and then here you go. So notice it opened it up in a new terminal. And you can see quit, edit, split, save as, reload, make, error search. You can go through it. You can highlight stuff. If I want to delete all that, All right. You can edit that. All right. So here's Elvis, okay? And I'm going to quit. Very, very similar to VI. Except I can't quit it. One thing we can do here, notice what I did here. Okay, let me do that again. So I go in here, I open up this command in here, and basically because it popped out in the terminal, if I go back to my terminal window over here and hit Control-C, it kills it. That's a real easy way to yank the plug on something. All right, so BVI, and we'll do manual command here again. Now this is a binary virtual editor. All right, so it tries to look at everything as a binary file. So some of you that have played with binary files before, you will probably recognize this format. So it displays all of the binary equivalent. And you can just do a :Q. Since it's VI oriented, you can do that as well. Except I have to figure out why my authentication protocols aren't working. All right, so that's a handful. Now also, so basically what I just did right here is I basically did this section. Let me close out of this. All right, so VIM, I show you how to install it and then how to basically open a file. How to install it, how to open a file. How to install it, how to open a file. How to install it, how to open a file. And I added the note about the page version. All right, so basically that covers basic file management. So I want you guys to practice this stuff. Know that you've got more alternatives than just things like more, less, head, tail, VIM, VI, Elvis, BVI, etc., etc., etc. So that ought to help. All right, so now I'm going to pick up where I left off before. And since this section here is all about the Linux and the file structure, today's lesson is basically all going to be centered around that. So basically it's moving around the file system. Okay, there are only files and directories. That's the easy part. Directories in Linux are listed with a / a / for the directory, as opposed to in Windows it's a \. So if I do a change directory to Etsy, and then that was dumb, clear my screen, do an ls tac lf pipe more. Here you can go. Notice in here, okay, everybody see the alternatives, the APT. These are all directories because they have basically a / at the end of them. So that ought to help. If you don't do the more, it's just, again, it'll just muscle through and just dump it all the screen, which you can scroll back up if you want. Or sometimes what it's easy to do is like I want you guys to learn how to manipulate things and get it to do what you want it to do regardless. So let's say I want to append that to a file called ls-lf.txt. And then I want to grep that for X11. Now, what I'm doing is I'm basically saying, take the command ls-lf, and I want you to move it to that command, and then, or move it to that folder, and then I want you to search that for X11. In this case, it failed miserably. So grep X11 in ls.txt. So if I do it this way, apparently it didn't like the exact syntax that I asked it to for that one, so it just gave me nothing back. So what I did is I basically ran the command, got it into the file, and then just moved this command here into its own one-liner. Realistically, it should have worked, unless I needed to create the file first, and that's what I needed to do. So it's things like this that you start getting the idea. The more you use this stuff, you'll get the idea. Once you start getting it, it will fall in place. So the only line that matches X11 is this one line. But let's say that I want to, I'm just going to play with grep here for a second, since it's already there, and I probably have two outputs here. So let's say I just want to find the letter E. In this case, that's too verbose, but it looks like there's a lot of SEs. So if I'd say grep, go get in this file, go find in this file SE in this particular file. So I'm basically saying go search this file for the words SE and then display them. And in that case, that was still a lot. So let's do an SEL. And in this case, this was if I'm articulate enough, then it'll get it down to just you can see SEL, 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 SEL. So that's a command that you're probably going to use from time to time. Okay. Now, okay. Now what I'm going to do is I want to show you guys another command. Now this is a little bit more pen testing oriented. So what I'm going to use is use pen testing concepts and mindsets to basically prove a point here using some basic Linux stuff. So in the Unix world, we have the etc shadow and the etc password. So if I do an ls tac lf pass, okay. In this case, it looked for it directly. So if I just focus in on this right here, I made it make it a little bigger here. I'm working right in here. So I basically said, go give me the shadow, and it came back and said, here is your shadow command. And then I said, go give me things that pass. In this case, it tried to match pass exactly, and it said I do not find a file or directory called PASS exactly. So then I said, okay, well, give me passwd, and it said, oh, I found passwd, here you go. Now I could have also done a pass star. In this case, if I would have done an asterisk here, you can see how it basically finds the iterations of that. Okay, so you know there are ways to use wildcards as well. Same thing if we do a cd2 of var log directory. Okay, whole bunch of stuff in here. All right, so I'm going to do this all in one line. So it's list and give me one page at a time. So this is everything in the var log. In a second, I'm going to actually explain what all these directories are, so just hang with me a second. So I'm really just illustrating how to bounce around here. Again, we'll learn that what's in each directory here in a second. But if I do this, then then I can again work out. I could notice I'm in the. If I print my working directory, I'm in var log. But if I change directory to home, cd/home. And then I ls lf var log, you can still do things in relative terms. Okay, I'm in my home directory, but I'm displaying the contents of another directory. Okay, so that's again working inside and outside of the path. Okay, there are times where I don't necessarily feel like moving the directory. I just want to stay where I'm at, and then just tell it to go put things in another location. All right, so that'll cover those. Now let's start looking at the file system in general. Okay, it's basically this section here. This is basically the Linux file system, okay? And this is where you guys want to start studying, for lack of better words. Certain things are going to be easy. You're going to be in them all the time. Other things, you're not going to be in them all the time. Okay, so bin directory for binary files. I have my boot directory. I have a device directory where I can keep my hard drives like SDA as HDA or whatever I want. I have an Etsy directory. We're going to spend some time in there. The home directory, okay, for user information, user-specific stuff, so you can see how that breaks down into user components. Also, you should have noted during install that when you're installing these, let's rewind for a second here. When you're going through these ISO installs, you probably asked you, do you want to just, use your default settings, or do you actually want to put /home, /temp, /whatever on its own partition, and if so, use the partition utility to set it up accordingly, or use everything as the default. So I, by myself, have installed everything as the default, so I'm not using a separate partition for everything, at least not as of right now. And so I have not moved all of my home files. But on a server, I absolutely would. You have your lib directory, which is your library directory. You have opt directory like KDD and GNOME. You have your root directory. Secure bin, very similar to bin, but it's sbin over here. You have your temporary files, and it's kind of convenient to check that every once in a while. You want to see what goes and gets put in your temporary folder. Every now and again, just do a directory for /temp. All right, you can get an idea. All right. So that's something that you can do quite often to get the feel for Linux. Then if you look in the user directory, notice there's a whole lot going on over here. This is one of those ones that splits out dramatically. You have your X11. This is basically for your graphical interface, so the binary files needed for that, or the X Windows Device Manager or Xterm. These are pretty significant in terms of the graphical interface, and troubleshooting them is kind of a pain sometimes. You use a local, like anything that you do locally for like FTP, those considered over there. And then user shared doc, like facts and how-to and packages. Get used to this one as well, because as we'll see here in a second when we start searching for different commands, you will see the user shared doc, how-to directory. Okay, so this is a nice graphical picture here that I picked out on the internet that really illustrates what to do. And so then the next part here, I'm basically walking you through the different components here. So we're going to play around with change directory, and we're going to learn what push directory and pop directory is. I also tell you, not a lot of new people to Linux know the push and pop, so that's actually a really, really good one to know. So as I set this thing back up, let's jump back over here. All right, so we know what change directory does, right? It takes you wherever you tell it. So if I tell it to go to var log, it'll take me to that. Please note the directory has changed over here. And if I want to change directory to home, I just tell it to go back home. And of course, I can double check by doing the print working directory command. Also, there's the push D command. Okay, so if you just type it, notice it says no other directory. So let's try to get some information about that. At first, we would go push D tac help and see what we get, and we get just some basic usage. So we get an N, a capital N, or a plus N and a minus N, and then the directory. That doesn't really help us if we're trying to learn what the command does. So let's do the manual for push D. And it says no manual command. So at this point, you scratch your head and you go, oh no, what do I do? So let's go ask Google. Okay. Now this will happen from time to time. You'll want a manual or a help file or something, and you're not getting the answer to what you need, and you need to go consult the Oracle. So we're going to go over here to Google Land, and I'm going to do the I do this the same exact way every single time, all the time. It's just the manual for push D. And if you search for that, you will come up with a variety of online manual pages, which most of these are effectively the same. So if I click on this and zoom in here for you guys, save and then change the current directory. With no arguments, push D exchanges the top two directories. It'll give you the syntax, so you can add directories. So this is the left of the plus sign is to the left of the list. The right side is the minus sign is the right of the list. And N suppresses the normal change of the directory when adding directories to the stack. Okay. So what you can do is you can do. This is all based on how things get pushed to the directory. So we're going to do push D var log. Okay. And notice what it did. It did a push D var log. It told us where we are from, and then our from, and then our to, and then it actually changed the directory to that. So now if I push D var log and then pop D, brings me back. So this is actually perfectly executed analysis right here. So this is, let's do it again. Let's walk for you guys from the beginning. It's push D var log. Basically what I'm saying is I'm saying bookmark where I'm at and then take me somewhere else. And then if I just pop the directory, it takes me right back to where I was. So it's instead of writing, okay, so here's where, you know, novice versus experience comes into play. Because let's say that I'm in some crazy, wacky directory format here. So let's say I'm in, let's go back over here and do, change the directory to user share doc how to. And I typed something wrong. User share doc how to. CD user CD share CD doc CD how. Let's just list the directory here. ls how to. All right, so it errored out on how to. So let's do an ls frequently asked questions. That's not there. And then ls for packages. That's not there either. So we got to pick something over here. And it looks like mostly files in here. So, well, let's create one. Well, actually, I think I just saw it. Actually, what we can cheat here. So ls tac lf, and then let's do how star. In this case, it doesn't find it enough. So how star brings up everything with an H. That doesn't help us. So probably not a good idea. So let me just create it real quick. So make directory packages. Okay. Now home. So now if I do a push directory to user share doc packages, okay, notice it saved it, so I don't have to type all this out. The purpose here is I don't want to have to type this out every single time, right? So if I just push the directory over there and then actually takes me there, now if I just pop the directory, it'll take me right back to where I was. And that's a real easy way of working at two ends of the spectrum. So think about it like this. If I'm over here in home, the root of home, and I need to, instead of navigating, change directory to user, change directory to local, change directory to FTP, change directory to lib, okay? If I know the path and know the structure, right, I can use my push and my popd commands to basically say, store it in memory because I'm going to need it again shortly. And as you can see, you know, it works very well. You know, push D and pop D, it takes you there and back very, very quickly. This is one of those, newbies typically don't know this or take advantage of it, I should say. And then some of the experienced people, you know, that are tired of typing stuff out all the time. The good news about Linux is you don't really have to use the mouse too often. The bad news is that you're always on the keyboard. So you're constantly looking for ways to do keyboard shortcuts. All right, so that'll give you the push and push D and pop D examples of that. Basically what it's doing, it's taking advantage of the last in, first out operations of the memory stack. Okay, so now that we're in home, okay, I'm basically going to start going through here and start showing and demonstrating the different commands. And some of these, when we actually get to, like, you know, ls, A versus F versus I, or, you know, these are actually worth doing. Later, as soon as we start learning aliases, I'll show you a way to, every single time you type ls, it'll type ls, tac lf. Okay, so there are shortcuts here. So if I'm going to do, let's do cd to Leo. Okay, so okay. Stop. Okay. All right, now basically all I've done is I've gone through and basically got myself into a blank directory for the sake. So if I just do an ls, you can see that there's nothing in it. So what I'm going to do is make some directories and navigate them, remove them, and edit them. So it's basically, you know, it's very, very easy to do this in a GUI. Just right-click, new folder. Okay, so I'm going to do a make directory, and I'm going to do a single tick secret projects and end tick. And then I'll do a list, and you can see that it created one folder with a space in it. So I use the single ticks as the operator. It basically says everything in between the single tick is the file name. So if I do, you know, Mary had a little lamb. Okay, well actually let's do it like this. It'd be a little easier to read. You can see that it honored the spaces. This is Linux Convention 101. It isn't, you could compare this. So if I wanted to do make directory to double quote secret projects 2, I was dumb. Make directory to secret projects 2 in double quote. Okay. Okay. Notice the difference here. There's none. Okay. You could have used the single operator, the single tick, or the double tick. Either way, it's a delimiter that basically says start and stop. Any questions? This may be a little bit to get your noggin around here, so all right, it looks like I forgot to monitor the chat dialog box. Okay. So far, so good. Any questions? At some point, I don't like just sitting here and broadcasting this information out. I mean, ask your questions about it. Or if this makes sense, tell me it makes sense. Or type it makes sense in the chat dialog box. Okay. I'm going to show you guys another way to do this. We're going to do a make directory.
What happens without the...
Make directory, Leo, is not so cool. There's another way of doing it. See that? And I'll do the command up again so you guys can see it. Notice what I did here. I'm basically using the backslash as an indicator for honor the space. I personally don't like this convention because I actually have to think about it, where if I just start the eliminator, end the eliminator with the previous, single tick or double tick, that to me is just conventional. It's my best practice. I do it every single time, all the time. You will find people that like this convention a lot. So there you go. I'm not ignoring you, Tommy. If you don't, are you asking, Tommy, what was your question asking? Looks like Mark. What happens when you pop the then push D, like in reverse, Mark?
No, you set up the push D, right, which created, you went to that directory. Then you pop D to come back to home. If you want to go back to that directory, do you just hit push D again, or do you have to type out that directory path again?
I think
so
it's...
So you push D and do the directory path, and then pop D pulls you back to home. So you can't then just hit push D and go back to where you were originally.
Yeah, okay. So what I did is I pushed and popped the directory, and so I stored it in there. And then what it did is, then I went over manually to another location and then tried to run the pop D again, and it says the directory stack is empty. So it's important to recognize that it's LIFO, last in is the first out. So basically I'm putting something in the temporary location, and then the first time I call upon it, it's removing it. And
A one-time use.
Yeah, but that's where, now this is a little advanced here, but this is where let me see if I can't cheat here. This is where the number comes in, because you can call upon multiple. So I could go into one directory and then go into another directory and then basically call the second one that I added in. So let me see if I can't figure that out real quick. It's not something I ever really do all the time, so bear with me here while I try to figure this out. So if we do a push D and then we call it Etsy, okay, and then it takes us there. And then we do a push D and then we go to var, okay. Now it's got two of them in here. So now it's, if I pop D, is it +2? That kept me there. I think it's it might only be 1 plus, or is it -1? Yeah, and then versus -2. Nah, see, it's kind of like loading a clip to a gun, right? If you don't do this exactly right, it's not there. But what does happen is the more times you push D in there, you can see that it'll keep adding them in there. So let me humor me here. Let me just try this again. So it's push D var, push D Etsy, push D bin, push D sbin. So you can see here, watch the pattern here. It's var Etsy. It's easier if you read this from right to left. So it's Etsy var Etsy, Etsy var Etsy bin, Etsy var Etsy bin sbin, and then it keeps me an sbin. So every time I pop D now, it's going to take the last one in. So pop D, pop D, pop D, pop D, until it's empty. So it's literally like loading a magazine clip. As many bullets as you put in, you're going to have to take out. Does that answer your question?
Not really, but I understand what you're saying. So you can't pop D, you're moving backwards. So
Basically, when I'm pushing
D, you can't go
D,
back and forward. That's it. You can't go back and forward.
what do you mean by back and forward? You mean just choose arbitrarily which one?
Right. When you did push D, you pushed yourself and created that directory path.
Well, which
Right.
one? I mean, and when I did it this time, I have four.
Or
of them
whatever.
in
Let's say
memory.
you did var. Okay. You
Okay.
pushed D var. So you created the var directory.
Okay.
Then you did pop D, which brought you back. But you then couldn't just type push D, which would drop you back into var.
No, it's specific to the order in which you load it in memory.
Right. So if you wanted to go back to var, would you then have to do plus one?
Yeah, and
minus one?
that's exactly right. But we're gonna have to kind of do this over again. Push D var. Whoops. Push D var. Push D. Etsy. Push D sbin, and then push D bin. Now if I do a pop D and then +2, that kept me here. So it's not 2. Well, it's not minus pop D button. Oh, you know what it is? Okay, so it's tac n and then what's it, +2? Is that the what that did is that removed sbin, kept me in bin but dropped the var, it looks like. You have to forgive me. I don't ever use it in this fashion. At best, I use it, for 1 or 2 directories at best. If I'm drilling down a directory, I'll use it occasionally. Otherwise, I navigate to it. So, well, I mean, we'd have to realistically look it up.
It's probably easier just to up and down arrow.
Yeah, I mean, unless you got some really crazy directory. We didn't need to add the n because all the n does is manipulate the stack, but it doesn't change the directory. So it probably actually worked, and I didn't even get to see it. So that's probably bad. Yeah, so it just manipulates the order in which you put in last. It purely is a last in first out operation of the commands. But it gets to a point where you can just up arrow a couple of times, and that unless it's unless the advantage here, I can tell you the advantage here and where I've seen it used. So let's say you push a directory. Let's say we do push D to var log, and then while we're in var log, we run 1,000 different commands in here. Well, in that case, hitting your up arrow is not really going to help you, because in your history, if I type in history here, okay, I could have, in my example, I could have like 50 commands in between my push and my pop operation. So while I'm working in that directory, I mean, I could be doing a whole bunch of stuff, and then it gets to a point where I'm ready to go back home, and then I just pop the directory, and bam, you're back. So in that case, I wouldn't want to cycle through the up arrow. But for all everyday applicable use, I probably only use one, maybe two directories. Deep for push and pop D. That's about it. So hopefully that helps. All right. Whoops. Okay. All right. So we did make directory. Here's where I was. Okay. Now let's do make directory my pictures / vacation. If we do this, can I create the right directories? No such file. Can I create the right my picture file directory? Well, what I was trying to do is create a file, a folder and a subfolder. And yeah, okay, so it was with a P. So let me do that again. So it would be make directory. Well, let's find out. So I don't want to do commands that you guys have to guess at. So in that case, let's find out what make directory does. So in this case, parents. P is for parents. No error if existing. Make the parent directory as needed. So this is going to be helpful because, and I'll leave this up here. Let's say I want to make the directory and call it budget / 2014 and call it Q1 finance. In this case, I forgot to add the P, which is exactly what I was supposed to actually show you. In this case, now I should be able to change the directory to budget, hit the 2 and then tab and then the capital Q and then tab, and then I'm here in that directory. So basically the TAC P creates subfolders. Now, just so everybody knows, I have made some minor changes to the study guide. I only added like 2 or 3 notes. So I'm actually going to replace the one that's in Dropbox at the end of this call. Okay. All right. So let's do CD home. Okay. Now let's do an ls tac f. Actually, let's not. Let's do a manual for ls. Okay. Now basically what I'm doing is I'm covering basically all of these right here. It is a good idea to do them. So I will do the manual of them, and then I will actually also I'm going to tell you what they do, and then I'll give you an example of one. So and I'm going to do a little rearranging here in my document. So A, do not ignore entries that start with a dot. sometimes there are folders. Like for example, when we cover web servers, there's a folder called .htaccess. Has anybody ever heard of that? Okay, so htaccess is it's kind of I mean, I don't want to call it a firewall, but it's an easy way to basically specify who has access. But the point is that it starts with a dot. So if I do Etsy and then do an ls tac a, whoops, tac a here, you will see a couple files that actually start with a dot, like a .java and things like that, where if I don't add that, Java, we got to go underneath here, the .java is gone. So there are special instances where there's a dot prefacing a file. Okay. So basically I've made a little note in here. Displays files with a dot in the front of it like .htaccess or .java. All right. Next, manual for ls. Let's go find out what a capital F does. Classify. This is an append indicator. Okay. So if you see, if I go out of that, if I do an ls here and then an ls tac F, note the difference. Let me clear that again and let me do it one at a time. So if I do an ls and then an ls with an F, watch all of the files. You'll see this / append. Okay, that'll basically tell you files and folders. Okay, so man for ls again. Now we're going to go look for the I. This is for the inode. Okay, print the index number of each file. In the Linux world, this is key. So if I just do an ls, actually let me go to an easier directory. So if I do an ls here and then an ls tac I, it gives me the inode prior to the file. And then if I do it, here you go. This is an easier way of doing it. I did an ILF, just puts it in easier format because everything's in columns. So it gives me the inode information here. So if I just take that I off, you'll notice that really the only difference between that one and this one is the inode number. We're going to talk much more about this. This is the key to how files get stored in Unix. So please pay attention to that. When you delete a file, you don't delete it from your hard drive. You're just deleting the reference to it, and that's very, very important in the forensics world. Michael, what was your comment again? The secure folder? What do you mean secure folder?
Sorry, it was in reference to the .htaccess.
Well, it's a secure file. And typically it's a read file, meaning read for everybody, or just the owner, not the the group in the world, but just the owner. Actually, I might be able to show you one. Here you go. I just happen to be working on my web server here, and you can see I have a .htaccess file right here. So it's read. The owner is read write, but everybody else is read. So if I just open this, there's really not much in it. It basically just I'm setting an environmental variable in it. I have other ones where I actually have good stuff in it, but this one doesn't really have too much in it. Here's an old one of it. That's just a .text file. So does that answer your question? Sort of. Okay, and then ls with the tac L is for listing file contents. You could do an ls tac O. You can see the slight difference here between an ls tac L and ls tac O here. Notice here, if I do an ls tac O, I get one name. If I do an ls tac L, I get two. Okay, so if we do a man ls for real quick and look for the O, it says just like the L, but does not list the group information. For the record, I never use this command. For whatever reason, I just don't. Okay, and then while we're here, let's do a P, append indicator to directories. So, and then we'll do R, and then I'll show you both of them. NOPQR, reverse order while sorting. Okay, so let's do ls tac P versus ls tac L. And then an ls tac reverse. So here I got Leo test 1, 2, 3. Here I got test 1, 2, 3 Leo. So reverse order. Now for the exam, you are going to need to know, this stuff off the top of your head. So if you're doing this for test prep purposes, at this point, you as I'm going through these commands, you should be saying them out loud, like ls tac R is reverse order. Okay, you should know that by now. If you're prepping for the exam, you need to have that stuff down, lickety-split. All right, and then an ls, oops, wrong one. Ls tac R. What do you think this does? What's this look like? See if you guys can get it before I pull up the help command. List the subdirectories recursively. Okay. Windows, can you do it? No. So Windows has like, here, let me show you over here. CMD. This is one of those like I gotcha commands in Windows. Does anybody know about the tree command? If I do a tree to C:/ in Windows, everybody see how the tree command, how that displays everything in the hierarchy? It's kind of similar to that, where it displays the directory structure. Except it doesn't give us this nice subfolder, which I actually kind of like. What do you want to call this? Hierarchy? It doesn't give us the hierarchy, but it's close. No, it'll go through one at a time, you know. So my pictures and a vacation. Okay, next one, LS-TAC-S. So that doesn't really help us out too much. So let's do a manual for LS. Sort by file size. All right. So let's try LS-TAC-L capital F, and then let's just add a capital S to the end of that. And in this case, that sucked. Let's try CD. So here you go. That's an LS-TAC-LF, and you can see the file size here. And then, whoops, if I add an S to that, now look at the file size. So if you display it now it's easy to see it because I'm basically sorting by file size. So question. The tree, before I move on, let me just hit that out. So basically I just opened up the command prompt here and I did a tree for C:\\, or you can do it to whatever relative directory you want. So if I do tree space C:\, or whatever directory, it'll list all the subdirectories for that. So if I just do it here, you can see it pulls it from the Leo directory. All right, so that'll get you the tree command in Windows. Now let's go to why would I want to look for just large files first? Come on. Think. Why might this be convenient? No, Tommy. Well, I think it's funny. Don't forget that we still got to be adult here. System use. How about log files? How about log files that fill up? Right? Yeah, what if you're running out of space? Good job, Mark. Yeah, all reasons which you might actually, look for something larger than smaller. Now, I will tell you, since we're kind of in hard drive land, FileMonger. I want to show you guys a command here. And while that is running, I will show you something over here. So it is a command called kdirstat. And actually, I'm going to let this run here. And I'll show it to you over here while it's installing. This is absolutely outside of the scope of this course, but this is like cool stuff, or so one might think. I want you to search for kdirstat. It's a KDE utility. But we're going to look here for the images of this. Now, the reason that I like this, and I brought this up in the last class, guys, is because we get a visual, let's try something like this. We get a visual representation of our hard drive in terms of file size. So I'm going to type this in the chat dialog box, kdirstat. KDirstat. It's a way to analyze your hard drive. Definitely install this and play with it. It takes a second to run and analyze it, but the cool part is it shows you exactly what files are smaller and bigger. And so you can see I've got a real large file over here, or a whole bunch of large files over here. And then down in here, in this amber section here, is all these little tiny squares, very, very small right there. Okay. So this is a great one to install. It will take a second to install. Just let that run for a second, and then we'll come back to that. Okay. But let's finish with the ls command. So that was sort, and then next we can do a manual for ls. Let's do QRS T. T is sort by modification time. Give me the newest first. Okay, so if I change directories to var log again, and then do ls tac t, and I kind of like this with TLF, specifically like this, and let me zoom out and zoom in for you guys. Okay, and come back up here. So it's an ls, and I did a TLF. So list it, give me the files, and give me a T. This, by modification time, gives me the most recent first. Okay. Or the last one is an X. I can sort by basically extension. So X is for extension. So if I control out of that, and then use the same directory here and just do an X, actually let me do an XLF. So I did an X, capital X, L, and then F. So basically I'm sorting, and what that does is it puts all of my errors, and then in this case it did it in alphabetical order, so it puts all of my log files together. Has anybody ever sorted their directories in Windows by application type? Meaning my ISOs, I can do sort by type right here. Okay, it's basically the equivalent of doing it via extension type. So now you guys have got a crash course in LS. All right, so all right, CD Leo. Okay, so now we're going to do an RM remove directory. And let me clear the screen again, give you guys a little real estate. Come on, VMware. Okay. All right. So I want to ls tech lf. So I got a whole bunch of stuff here. Now some of these actually have the subfolders in there. So like my pictures. Remember my pictures had vacation in it. So I'm going to delete it. Remove directory, my pictures, and hit enter. And it says, hey, failed to remove my pictures. Directory is not empty. Uh-oh, what to do? Okay. One thing we could do is do a remove directory. Okay. And do ignore fail on non-empty. and then, of course, the directory. Now, you guys may have noticed I did not type that quickly. So what I did is I typed rmdir space tac I tab. So in the remove directory command, there's only one tac I, and then I auto-completed, I hit tab, and then I did space my pictures. So this will delete everything in that directory. Now if I hit up arrow twice, you should, why is that there? Oh, here, bad command. It all goes back. This is where vacation. What was it? P-A-C-A-T-I-O-N, right? Yeah, vacation. Okay. So in this case, this is I had to specify the whole path. All right. So now if we try it, failed to remove my no such file directories. And that normally indicates a typo. Oh, let's try getting out of the directory. There you go. Ah, no, still there. What am I doing? Ignore the failure non-update. It should be. Oh, wrong. This is why if you go from notes, things don't work because you're on the wrong train of thought. Forget all that. All you had to do was well, getting closer. Remove directory tac P, all right, and then my pictures vacation. In this case, permission denied. So at least it worked. And I'm still installing that other utility, so my computer is about 5 microns behind everything.
So you have to be root to remove a directory?
No. Not in it, but Linux is a little sensitive on not letting you saw off your own arms, so to speak. So in this case, if I go into my pictures and well, in this case, it's doing it from the relative point down. So because I'm already in it, there is no subfolder in it. So it's looking from within my pictures and looking for another my pictures within it. So in that case, you can't really do it. I mean, I guess I could try something to see if it'll work, but no. It's still looking from its point forward and fail. So you don't want to be in the directory you're trying to delete. My pictures. Ha! Still there. That should be it. What am I thinking of? No, remove the directory and its ancestors. No. No, that should have been it. What am I doing wrong here? No. Yeah. Should remove directory. Permission denied. Failed to remove. Unless close out of this other terminal. Something else has got a lock. Permission denied. Failed to remove. Why am I getting a permissions error?
Did you?
No. No such file directory. Failed to remove it. Well, my original thought was that it's something locked onto that directory. Still got permission denied.
Hey, Leo. Leo, this is Jason. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You tried doing sudo? Your account may not be part of the sudoers.
That was probably the dumbest thing I've done all day. Um, so let's do this. LF. Notice the permission here, okay? These permissions, the default permissions, by creating them, I had it set to read, write, and execute as the root. I must have been logged in as root where I was doing that, where before I guess I had changed back as Leo in my bouncing around between, I guess, going over sudo and switch user and going back and forth. So what I was actually trying to do was delete files or folders that basically weren't mine, and that's exactly why I was getting that error. So it was the correct syntax. It just was as I was scratching my head trying to think of the obvious. I was like, what the hell's going on? But hey, this is why oh, you shouldn't be teaching class after a long day. Because sometimes the obvious things are right in front of your face and you don't even pay attention to them. So Chris or Jason, I noticed Jason's comment right in the command, but wasn't that Chris? Chris, is that you that just chimed in?
No, that was Jason.
Oh, was it Jason? That sounded like
Yeah,
Chris.
that was Jason. That was Jason.
Sounded like Chris. Chris, I think you got another brother, man. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't be that time.
Come on, man. All right. So I'll play the goofball on that one. So lesson learned, right? What I would say is, permission denied. At that point, I should have really started to pay attention to who I was logged in as or what I was trying to do. Because if you notice, if I scroll up here, I did some permissions. I was looking at them, and even though I checked the permissions, I totally didn't see that versus who I was logged in as. So, even the best of us make dumb mistakes. So that was one of my dumb ones. All right, and then change directory and then move directories. So let's take a quick break here, and then let's go till 9:30. So that's when you start making dumb mistakes like that. That's when it's time to take a break. So please do me a favor. Do not let me forget to start the recording again. So as you guys can see, with this stuff, again, there's a reason why we have a couple different operating systems, a couple different virtual environments, so that you guys can log into Kali, practice these commands. Log into something GNOME-based, practice these commands. Log into something KDE-based, practice these commands. And really hit them out with repetition. Because, what I would recommend, how I would recommend studying for the exam, instead of trying to make flashcards and remember, what does, RM TACP do? What does it do? Or remove directory TACP rather. Instead of trying to memorize that, it's easier just to do the commands and look them up and use that as your hands-on experience. That's going to be much, much better than trying to flashcard this stuff out, at least in my opinion. I remember when I studied for my exams, I did not use flashcards. I basically just sat here on the terminal and you went over test questions and kept doing the command line options until I could do it in my sleep. All right. So next command, let's do the MV command. So if you just type in MV, it will tell you do an MV tech help. So we'll do that. And this is one of the longer help files. Okay. So move the source to the destination directory. Rename source to destination. And don't really have too many examples here. So if you do a manual for MV, I think this has examples. No. All right, so let's just cover it while we're here. You got F again. Do not do not prompt before overwriting things, so it forces it. So this is a very aggressive command. You have TAC I for interactive. That kind of themes out a little bit, and then TAC T for your target directory. So in this case, I'm going to quit out of that, and then do see what directories I have here. So let's move budget somewhere. Let's move so in this case, if I just do it like this, what I've done is I've essentially just renamed the directory from capital B in budget to lowercase b in budget. Something you might do from time to time. But if you want to move it somewhere else, so I can do MV budget to home. And in this case, it's gone. So if I do a CD to home, now you can see budget is over here. So good thing you don't have to be, I guess you would have to be sudo for that, wouldn't you? But basically it's renaming the directory. Okay. Next, let's do some wildcards. So I'm going to create a couple more files. Let's do I'll do 1, 2, 3 test. Create another file using the touch command. Now let's do it. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And ls tech lf. So here you can see I've got a couple different commands, and I might need to create a few more of these as I go here because I'm kind of winging this on the fly here. If I do an ls my star on my notes I have it as text, but none of these are text files. Oops, stupid. I'm reading my notes. So how about test star instead of my star? So in this case, if I do test, it'll give me everything that starts with test. So it gives me test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and test 1, 2, 3. As opposed if I do test star and then test and use the asterisk in the beginning, this tells me the one that begins with everything and ends in test. Or if I say ls star test star, this will give me all of them. So that's a very convenient way of searching for or listing things out. So if I change directories to var log and then do an ls star log, this will just show me all of my log files. Or I could have done star.log, and you'll see that'll change the output just slightly because I'm including the dot in there. So that's one easy way of doing that. So, questions? Good.
When you did the ls test and you got the test 1, 2, 3 and it had a colon after it, was that designating it as a directory?
No. What do you mean a colon? I don't think I did anything with a colon.
On the output, no, on the output you got test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then test 1, 2, 3 colon for the output.
Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. Um, I think so. File exists. Oh, so in that case, yes. So denoted here by, I couldn't create a file and a directory that were the same thing, so I just created another arbitrary directory, and the directories are listed here, and then the files are listed here. So if I touch test 456, make dir test 1, make dir test 2, and then ls star test star. There you go. Then you can see the folders. I'm sorry, the files and then the folders. Make sense?
Yes, I follow.
Yep, exactly. Okay. All right, so that was the wildcard with the Astrid. Now we can do the same thing with a question mark. So let's do touch my a.txt, touch my b.txt, touch my c.txt, and then ls my question mark.txt. In this case, it uses a wildcard for that single character, different than ls my star. I noticed I had to leave off the .txt to that. Although in this case probably wasn't a good example because I'm basically getting the same exact output. So it's not specific enough to distinguish single character versus multi-character in this case. But normally the wildcard of a question mark is for a single character and wildcard is for everything prior 2 and 4. But in this case there's just not enough variables in what I'm typing to actually distinguish in between my outputs. So I don't want you to think that this is the same exact command because it's not. Yeah, so in this case, if I preface it before, let's do a touch a my .txt, touch b my .txt, and then in this case, it'll give me both a and b. my.txt. Other things that we can do here is we can use brackets. Let's say touch my 1.txt, touch my 2.txt, touch my 3.txt, and what I have here in the syntax is ls my bracket 1 through 3 bracket in bracket .txt, and this will basically give me 1, 2, and 3. But if I just change this to a 2, it'll just it excludes that third one denoted by here. So that's like another way of saying just what's in here. So I also could do this in numbers too. So if I do a touch my a, touch my b, and for the record, touch my C, and then ls my bracket A through B, and bracket. There you go. It did not give me the C. Other ways of doing things. Now let's do a touch my A, touch my B, touch my C. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distinguish between uppercase and lowercase. So if I clean this up a little bit, clear, and then do an ls tech lf. Okay, I got a whole bunch of files here to work with, and specifically or lowercase, uppercase, lowercase, uppercase, lowercase, uppercase. So I can also do an ls bracket my bracket A, comma A, and bracket. And if I do that, then it'll show me both versions of that. These are good when you're searching for things in log files, especially case-sensitive log files, if you don't know if something is uppercase or lowercase. So let's say, like, you can see my directory here inside home is Leo. But I could easily make a directory Leo here. And so you can see uppercase and lowercase. So if I wanted to find bracket L, comma, lowercase, bracket. Okay, this will give me all, well, here, let me back up because I kind of went by a little too quickly here. In this case, I'm finding both lowercase and uppercase versions of Leo. Most of them, as I created my default account, were lowercase, but if it just happens to be at the very, very end of this, I have one folder or one file called, what was it, directory? Yeah, directory of a uppercase. So that's really, really helpful. You will find these. Okay, you can also, there's another special condition of this, which instead of brackets, it's parentheses. So I'm going to create two new files, a c.txt and a b.txt, and then I want to find a, b, c, okay. Should have found both. It should have found a, b. And then a c.txt. Syntax near. Find a, b. Well, here, let's do, so it's not liking that. ls a and b and then a and c. That should have hit that. Why would you do this and what for? Tommy, what specifically is your question? What do you mean, why would I do this? Why would I use the, the asterisk versus the question mark versus the brackets versus the parentheses? Oh, okay. All right. I mean, it should have created that. Touch. Because this is the syntax. but the find command is not liking that. Well, what this actually should have done is went and found all of the references to motor and then bike and then motor and then car and displayed those output. So let me see if I can't figure out what I did wrong real quick. That doesn't help. Well, we've done it before, so this is another brain fart. Let's see. I don't know. I'll have to come back to that. I'm going to highlight it in the document. I'll give you guys a better example of that and actually something that works. But I'll actually have to fix this in the lab so that when you guys actually go through this, you guys can do it basically word for word, because realistically what happened is should find motor, bike, and car. Let me check something right quick. I must have pulled that stuff from the study guide because it's not in my manual. Okay, I'll have to come back to that. It's basically combining the parentheses with the piping to find multiple versions of something. So I'll have to come back to that. I mean, the only other thing I can think of is that I need to put it all. No, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. I'll give you guys a better lab on that, I promise. Next, we can either end here and then pick up with. We probably should end here because the next we're right at the halfway section of this module, and I want to spend some time going over. Excuse me. Find and locate. Now you guys have the basics in the module 3, and not too much is going to change from there. But what I want to do is start combining some of this stuff and give you a little bit better examples here. And then go through the additional commands like copy and a little bit more about remove directory, touch teeing, help file test. We'll talk about file globing or globbing, some people say, stat and things like that. So we probably should just call it a night here. Because I want to come up with something a little bit more. I want to basically fix this piece right here give you guys something that you can reproduce and wrap your head around, and then also go into how to locate things, like use commands like find, locate, updated, which, where is, and things like that. So you guys should have plenty of do at this point, because it's basically navigating the directory structure, learning the basics of some of the directories, which again, when the directories, all I've done is basically say, hey, there's a lot of them, and here's some basics about them. We're going to cover the directories a lot more in depth because you're going to need to go into things like SBIN eventually. But we also talked about the different basic editors like Vim versus VI versus Elvis versus binary VI and gedit and things like that. So let's stop here for tonight, and then we'll just do a little Q&A here. So questions and answers. Let's start here. Preguntas. Don't hold back. Also, we're going to have test questions to follow here. We've really done no test prep in here, so I'm going to be giving module quizzes. I've slowly been creating them. I basically almost have one done, but those are the quizzes will come right after the module. So I'll probably be doing quizzes about a module or two behind the module. So we'll get into module 3, and then I'll get out module 1 here. So just to give you an idea. Any questions?
Leo, I noticed you use folder and directory interchangeably. Are they the same thing when you create a folder? Is that like creating a directory?
You mean in the way I'm talking about them, or?
Yes. When you're creating something, when you do touch, you're creating a file.
Yeah, touch is for, it's a really easy way to create, file, touch file, and that creates a, well,
right.
file.
When you created capital Leo,
Yeah,
did you create a folder or did you create a directory?
Same thing.
That was my question. So folder and directory are interchangeable.
Yeah, so like for example, make directory Leo. It says a file exists, change directory to Leo, change directory back, make directory Leo, and then change directory to Leo, and then change directory back. So if I do, so an ls, come on. Oh, I was probably dumb. I mean, I did navigate to both of them, so it's Leo and then... Oh,
Right,
because I have a file that exists already, so so remove directory Leo. Help. Too much going on here. remastar.txt. All right, now we're getting somewhere. That's a directory.
So RM only does files, and
Yeah.
RMDir does directories.
Exactly. All right, so in trying to clean up the directories, I lost myself. What was your question again? The file and directory interchangeably?
No, it was just about folder and directory are interchangeable.
Yeah, they
When you
just
create-
can't be
when you
the
create a
named.
folder.
They just can't be the named. Oops. They just can't. I'm trying to show you something. Hang tight here. Remove Leo is a directory. So in this case, I have two directories. We can do this. And, well, here's what I would show you in class. Why isn't my auto complete working? Remove directory. Ignore, fail.
When it says remove directory and its ancestors, does that mean subfolders?
Yes. Fail on non-empty Leo. Directory is not empty. It's been a long day. All right, so apparently what I can't do is delete things. Lesson to self. To answer your question, as long as there's not a file and a folder named the same thing, but RM would be for files, RM directory would be for folders. This is a quick answer. Now, typing that in the terminal and actually getting it to work is apparently a little bit more difficult. Or another way you to do this is to actually go in the directory, see what's in it. I don't want to go into that. Remove directory Q1. That's what happens when you type too fast. So this is another way to do it. You could just do it manually. Oh yeah, these are all the directories. See, we created directories with all those. So you have to add the TAC P, get the correct syntax. You can do it that way. So I don't think you can do wildcard. Whoops. a wild card like that. Oops, remove directory, tech paste. Yep. And bye-bye. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. Yeah, so watch this. All right, so it's clear, and I'll do touch Leo and then make directory Leo. Notice what it says here. Cannot create the directory because the same exact name exists. So like in Windows, you actually can create a folder called, well, can you? New folder.
So if you create the directory first, can you create the file?
No. Oh, it'll just error out it'll error out the other way.
Okay.
So we're going to call this Leo and then create a new text document. We'll call it Leo. So in Windows you can. It does distinguish between files and folders. You just can't have two if you basically want to create a new iteration of that, it can't distinguish between those. So just to give you an example in Windows, but if I go back over here to VMland, if I touch mark, wait, which one do you want first? Do you want the file created first?
Directory first.
Directory first. Make directory mark touch mark. That's weird.
So is there a
Never
mark file
noticed.
inside the directory mark?
Never noticed that in that order before. So apparently if you make your directory first, you can do a touch mark, but it doesn't error out. But notice there's no files here called mark. Even if I display, hidden files, basically there's no mark. So let's try to humor me one more second. Let's do a manual for manual, and then let's pipe the output to mark. So it won't let me create if I create the directory but it doesn't error out. So here we created the file first, then when we tried to create a directory, it actually said cannot create a directory because the file exists. When we did it in the exact opposite, we made the directory mark and then we touched the mark, it did not error out. It wouldn't let us create it because when I'm trying to append now to that file mark, it's basically saying it's a directory. So the pure test into this would be to remove the file mark and see if it asks us if it's a directory. In this case it does, so it's remove the directory.
So you created directory mark, and then you created the file mark. Mark didn't necessarily go into the directory mark.
No.
Okay.
No, it didn't append it. But I could have done touch mark. I thought I could. Should be able to create a Yeah, there you go. All right, so you just couldn't use the forward slash. So in this case, if I change directories to Mark, Mark is inside of that. Whoops, no. Yeah, Mark. So if I do a manual of the manual and append that to Mark, there you go. So yeah, so now Mark is a file. So I can create it relatively speaking. That's just working outside of your path, right?
Right.
I'll get you, my pretty. Okay, questions. It's good stuff. Tommy, Chris, you guys should be focusing on these command line options here. Okay, you guys should be figuring out what's the difference between the ls-this-that. That's where you guys should be, because you guys are in it for the test prep at this piece. So you get a basic, review of the course, and I want you to repeat your hands-on because that will reinforce the test prep stuff. But for the test taker, if you're just in this for test prep, this is where you start going through test questions and you start looking up, what is an LS, TAC A do versus, an AL versus an AL ALF. Okay, that was kind of a joke. All right, you guys got to figure out those differences, because when you're actually in the exam and you need to, ask yourself, what's this? What do I do with this? It's not going to pop in your head as easily. But if you've done it, my point being is if you've actually done it with hands-on, then you increase the likelihood of you actually being able to remember and recall this stuff. So practice out with them. Use these modules as cheat sheets, as you go over there. I mean, there's still some things I need to clean up, some syntax I want to change here and there. But, I mean, I want you to go through and be able to, basically visualize these commands and then visualize the output. So like when we were doing all that LS stuff, which is probably the longest LS lab ever done in recorded history, see what the difference is between, an LSA. Is there even a capital A? Can we do an LSA versus LS capital A? Does it make a difference? Slightly different output. You got to figure out why. Okay, so that's where you guys need to be in these documents. You guys want to take the fast version through this and be able to run through all of these hands-on, and basically know exactly which each one does. I know why. It's in my syntax here. I needed to do the full directory is why the P wasn't working. So every now and then it's a good idea to come back to your syntax. But what I tried to do, instead of just saying like LSA, for example, I tried to give you multiple iterations of this. And who knows, I may actually copy and paste and give you examples of the output and put them in a legend or something. But we effectively got up to right around the wildcard section. I want to revisit some of that. For next class, I want to go over find. I want to go over locate. I want to look at the properties of files. Michael, this will be important for you for forensics purposes. You're going to need to know this little section right here, and especially the inode inside and out, because I give you plenty of different examples of how to use find in the probably the most common and even some ridiculous examples of stuff that you'll probably never use, versus locate versus slocate versus which versus whereas versus grep. Okay, so pay attention to these things, because we're going to start using these. And Unix is one of those things. It's like if you don't ride the bike, you're going to forget how to ride the bike. So and throw in a little saturation, or you have a long day, you'll forget easy stuff like who are you logged in as, and you'll stare at your terminal and you go, I mean, the error is right in front of my face, but I'm just not paying attention. So you need to be able to figure out a recipe to overcome saturation, and how do I remember it, and how do I figure it out. I have never ever complained to know anything or everything, but what I do pride myself in is my persistence in being able to figure stuff out. Sometimes you guys, it's painful enough for you guys because you guys get to watch that happen, live here. But I'd rather hire someone or be hired. I'd rather hire someone that has the ability to think through a complex problem, not someone that has memorized commands, because that doesn't help any of us. So this week I used a brand new Debian GNOME install. I'll probably maybe use this for a week more, maybe 2, and then I'm probably going to switch to another operating system altogether, or maybe I'll do the second half of this module on SUSE or something like that, because as we're going through this, I also want to show you guys a variety of the interfaces, and how does it look differently on SUSE versus Fedora versus whatever. So any questions? Let's wrap this up. Any questions? You guys got the
I was just thinking, I like when you make mistakes because it makes me think about your entries.
Well,
it gets us all thinking in the same path.
Good. I mean, I've gotten a raft of crap having it done both ways. I've gotten everything from, well, you don't know what the heck you're doing, to I like the flip side of that, which is I like seeing the error messages, especially when I used to teach ethical hacking, or I still do, but ethical hacking and stuff like that. Some of my best classes were classes where nothing worked, because when you spoon feed somebody and it's in this ideal environment, then it's like you expect the world realistically to be spoon-fed from you. And I'm big on, okay, I don't care if we get error messages. Let's just figure out a quick way to get around them. Let's be persistent about it, and let's think through them. Sometimes the answers come to me a little quicker than others, depending on, I guess, how much I'm paying attention or how saturated I am, or, it is, a 12-hour day at this point for me as well. But in summary, I'm not afraid of error messages. I want you guys to see error messages. I don't want you guys to see me do these things perfectly executed and in this ideal environment, turn around and go back to your system and expect everything to work in its pristine environment, because it's frankly not. Michael and I were talking about this. I mean, he's having some problems with the installs between 64-bit versions versus 32-bit versions, and I want you, this is the time to get the error messages and to beat your head against the wall. Not too long, though, because, if you can pick up the phone and call me and, I can give you the quick answer, please. That's why I'm here. That's why you guys have paid the money for the course. I'm here to make your learning curve as easy as possible, but I'm not going to just, demonstrate commands and I expect everything to work. I mean, I don't know how many times I've used Nmap. I still type the syntax wrong when I want this, that, or the other in that tool. I mean, that's the way it works. So I want you guys to I don't want you to avoid the mistakes. I want you to make the mistakes and learn from them as quickly as possible. That in the real world is much more valuable than someone that's just got some commands memorized. Because eventually, you will get to, there's a running joke of the people that only use brain dumps to study for exams. You're in the real world and you get an error message, and then you think to yourself, oh man, that wasn't in the brain dump. What do I do now? And that's basically the nut, the moral of the story, right? If you're trying to memorize test questions and answers, or in this case, memorizing, commands and command switches, that only goes so far in the real world. And to me, it's not really valuable at all.
That's why I like to see the mistakes.
Well, I'll even raise you up
mistakes.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're going to say.
I said, when I see you make mistakes, it allows me to have confidence that, hey, when I make a mistake, the world doesn't end.
Well, exactly. But let me raise you one. Think about a job interview. When you get a job interview and somebody's they're on the other side of the desk and they're going, what's the command for this? What's the command for that? that is absolutely useless to determine someone's place in the workplace. I mean, I've been in interviews where they're like, what's the Cisco command for this? And I wrote, it was on a written test, and I remember I wrote question mark, question mark. I think I wrote that for every single question that they gave me. And then the engineer came out and said, really, question mark for everything? And I said, yes, question mark for everything. I don't memorize commands. And you'll probably see that several more times in this course. I don't memorize commands. I know of commands, but I'd much rather be able to help my way through things and to go through it and know, okay, well, how do we skin this cat? How do we get this to do what we want it to do in spite of the errors? And thus far, I've had a full career being able to do that. And I would be the absolute first person to say Linux is one of those things where it's like you have to lead with your mistakes. Anytime that I see somebody on a terminal that does something that I don't know how to do, or that I'm like, whoa, what'd you just do? Let's do that again. I make them explain it to me. And I get the same thing from other people. For you guys, it's I try not to work too quickly, and I try not to just start arbitrarily talking about commands and take anything for granted. Like this morning, you guys called me, or this morning, that's how long of a day it's been. Earlier this evening, you guys called me out on what's the su versus the sudo command. And I was like, clearly I could explain su versus sudo inside and out. And then 15 minutes later, I'm staring at an error message and going, well, I don't understand why this makes sense. Why am I saying permission denied? And I actually needed to use the command that I just finished explaining. So being able to think through your problems is much, much more valuable. Tommy, good night. He's already gone. All right, Mark, Michael, anything else? All right, we're going to pick up right here.
All good.
Yeah. We're going to pick up pretty much right here on
Thanks, Leo. Have a good evening.
Thursday. Thank you, sir. All right, so it looks like Mark's on his way.